This is the story of the Committee of Grande Pointe based on Alexandre Barde's novel The Vigilante Committees of the Attakapas, an eyewitness account of banditry and backlash in southwestern Louisiana. The novel is non-fiction and historical, yet extremely biased and exaggerated due to Barde being an unreliable narrator. Barde was one of the vigilantes among the committees and gives a first-person account of what occurred during the tirade and also the Battle of Queue de Tortue. The novel gives insight to the prejudices and persecutions of the pre-Civil War era in southern Louisiana, taking place in the late 1850s. The Committee of Grande Pointe is led by Louis Domingue, who gives an account of his committee's actions to a man named Alcée. Chapter 6 of the novel gives detail of the two stories, one of John W. and one of Pierre Bergeron, that exemplify the prejudices of the committees and their pro-slavery and anti-change agenda. Disciple of Harriet Beecher Stowe due to his abolitionist views and values, John W., an abolitionist from the North, fell in love with a slave and attempted to run away with her. He not only broke a social taboo by being a white man falling in love with a slave, he also broke the law when he attempted to run away with her. While this technically classifies John W. as a bandit, the most likely reason for the vigilantes' persecution was the breaking of Southern social values and slave culture. The vigilantes were already suspicious of the abolitionist as his values contradict theirs, and because John W. went to the slave's owner and asked for her hand in marriage and the slave owner refused, as slaves were seen as property. The slave owner pleaded with John W. to leave the matter alone and not to pursue anything, but he did not listen. John W. then attempted to run away with the slave, although he did not make it very far. The vigilantes caught the couple and lashed both of them, banished John W., and then returned the slave to her owner. The story of Pierre Bergeron stands out in the fact that he is not a bandit. He is a prominent slave owner that would extensively torture his slaves. Because of this, Pierre was deemed a monster. While it is true that slaves were considered property, there were laws that banned those that tortured slaves from buying again. The occasional tortured slave would make those around indignant, but no action would be taken. Pierre Bergeron was more than excessive in his torture. Only 2 occasions are recounted, but, according to Barde, the list of these occasions is extensive. In the first instance, Bergeron leaves a slave tied down in the swamp overnight for the mosquitoes. Pierre also leaves a slave to burn in a bread oven. In both instances, Bergeron is said to have shown no emotion or concern. Instead, he stays in thought about new ways to torture his slaves. The story of Pierre Bergeron is Barde's way of saying that slave owners are not all horrible people that constantly put down their slaves. Pierre Bergeron is an exception that does not represent the vast majority of slave owners. In all, Barde's novel gives a look into what life was like in southern Louisiana in the late 1850s. His novel, however biased, gives account of the social values of the time, especially with the 2 stories from the Committee of Grande Pointe. John W.'s story shows the committee's beliefs in upholding pre-Civil War era social values as well as slavery. Pierre Bergeron's tale gives light as to how cruel some slave owners could be, but also exemplifies the committee's relaxed reactions to the wealthy upper class as well. The novel in its entirety shows how Barde paints the committees as heroes when they truly were precursors to later supremacist groups and seemed to go after people that did not share the same values rather than just petty criminals.